Unpredictable world. Control your emotions.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball. Today we're going to be looking back at Thursday's 6 games, then previewing the 8 games for Friday in the NBA. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Let's start where we always do with
monstrous line of the night.
And for the second time in as many games, it is Russell Westbrook with that monstrous line of the night. Another triple-double, 19, 14, and 11. 4 steals and 2 blocks. He hit a 3, 8 of 18 from the line, and was 8 of 18 from the field, and 2 of 2 from the line. Westbrook's last month has seen him rocket up the rankings list, mainly because he's shooting 49% from the field there. The 5th ranked player over that last month, averaging 30, 11, and 8 with 1.3 steals. The free throws, still a real issue, but by now you know that you're losing free throws majority of the time if Westbrook's on your team. So you're punting that category, and maybe he's like the 3rd or 2nd best player over that last month because of the way that he has elevated that shooting. 37% three-point shooting in that time as well, hitting over 3 triples per game, which for a guy who's hitting only 1.6 over the course of the season is definitely a big surprise. I think I stuffed that up. Oh well, let's play that clip again.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
That's better. So Westbrook, you're coming good at the right time of the year in terms of fantasy playoffs, and that field goal percentage and the threes are a real boost. The other thing that has happened is his assist numbers have dropped over the recent time frame, but another strong back-to-back monstrous line of the night for Russell Westbrook.
Waiver wire line of the night.
This is also the deep leaguer of the night. It's Stormin Norman Powell of the Toronto Raptors, with Kyle Lowry unexpectedly out, Serge Ibaka of course suspended, and Fred VanVleet injured. Norman Powell got a bit of a boost. 24 minutes for Powell in this one. He was running some of that backup point guard role with Jeremy Lin in the starting lineup. He ended up with 24 minutes, 20 points, 3 triples, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block. So a big bump in usage. He was efficient, shooting that 50% from the field. I don't think there's anything we need to get overly excited about with Powell, but once he returned from his injury, he really sucked. But since then, he has started to improve, and we know that, or not know, I feel that if Powell was in a different situation, on a different team, he could be a top 120, top 100 fantasy type of player. But on this Toronto team, there just isn't enough value, enough playing time, enough shots to go around for Norm Powell. But strong performance here, and he's one of those deeper league stream type of players when Lowry rests or Danny Green is out or Kawhi Leonard is out. We can see some of his numbers go up. That's his 2nd double-digit scoring night in the last 3 games, and had 6 assists in those 2 big scoring games, and has shot 50% or better from the field in 4 consecutive performances. So really strong from Norm Powell to be your waiver wire and deep leaguer of the night.
Young gun of the night.
The young gun of the night is Luka Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks. 35 minutes for the Donch. Almost got the victory over the Nuggets. 24, 11, and 9 with 2 steals. 44% from the field on 23 attempts. And still a disappointing 3 of 7 from the free throw line. I have absolutely zero explanation as to why his free throws are so bad. This guy was an 80% free throw shooter in Europe, and over the last 7 games, he's at 55%. Over the last 22 games, he's at 65% from the line in that Russell Westbrook punt territory. And realistically, over the last month, he's been one of the most hurtful players in the free throw percentage category. This is what keeps him from being a top 30 guy, is these free throws. He's a positive in every other category apart from percentages. And the volume he's taking from the field and from the line is really having an impact on that overall total rank number, but it's why rankings can always be confusing when looking at players, or misleading for how it sits on your team. You might have punted both those categories. You might be super strong in field goal percentage and have a bunch of big men, and his negativity doesn't make a dent. Now, the free throws probably do, and I think we expect these things to improve pretty significantly, but the free throws are a really, really weird one. But I think with Doncic's ability, his competitiveness, we will see that improve. The other thing that's going to improve is he is shooting just 28% from three over the last 22 games. That needs to improve, and that's often where players in their second season take big jumps forward. So I wouldn't be expecting Doncic to stay with these poor percentages throughout his career. I think we see pretty decent improvements next season and significant improvements heading into his third season. The dud of the night is Bogdan Bogdanović of the Sacramento Kings. Bogdanović moved to the bench so that Nemanja Bjelica could start, and he saw his minutes drastically reduced. Now, there was some foul trouble there for BB8, 4 fouls in those 18 minutes, but 9 points and 2 assists just does not get it done. You could expect a little bit of extra playing time for Bogdan here, and I think that the 11 minutes that Alec Burks got in this game isn't necessarily something he will do every night, but Bogdanovic's minutes, even before this game, were starting to trend downwards. 25 minutes last game before Bagley returned. And if you're in a 12-team format, a guy who hovers around the 100 to 120 type ranking mark, that spot a lot of the time can be used better for streaming, especially if he's going to remain in, say, a 24, 25-minute bench role, which it does look like will be the case, at least for this short term, as Bjelica was in that starting lineup today. And I don't imagine that Jaeger will move away from that after just a one-game, I was going to say experiment, but it's not an experiment. It's like a re-experiment after doing it so often this season. So I think we're in a little bit of a trouble time here for Bogdanovic's future value. Not sure that Bjelica necessarily stays at the sort of playing time that he got in these last couple of games, 27 minutes in today's game, but those minutes will likely end up going more to Marvin Bagley, and that's going to have an impact on Bogdan. So in a 10-team, I think he's definitely a drop candidate. In a 12-team league, he's a little bit more on the borderline. The best net ratings, the GOATs, where's it? Awundu with the best net rating, plus 130.8 in the Magic's big win over the Cavs, while on the other side of that, David Nwaba was poor for Cleveland, negative 118.1. These guys don't really have any sort of impact in fantasy whatsoever. And then onto some injury news. Drew Holiday, and I guess by association, Etuan Moore. Some troubling things coming out of New Orleans with Alvin Gentry saying we're going to be extra cautious with him. There is a chance that Holiday doesn't play again this season. There's no guarantee in that. It's hard with such uncertainty to make decisions in dropping him, because when he plays, he's a top 20 guy. But if you're going to lose this week anyway by holding on to him and not getting an extra 3 games out of that roster spot, then what's the point of having him a top 20 player for next week's playoff match if you aren't there to actually contest that playoff matchup? So hard decisions have to be made. He won't be back this week. If you are going to win this week or you got to buy, I would hold Holiday unless there's some ridiculously great free agent around, but I would hold until we get a little bit more of an update on Drew. Likely across the weekend, maybe on Sunday, we get some more information about Holiday. But if you need something on Friday, Saturday, Sunday this week, otherwise you're not going to get through, then common sense would dictate to you that Holiday can be moved on from in that scenario. The Jazz lost both Dante Exum and Thabo Sefolosha in today's game with knee and hamstring issues which have plagued these guys over the course of their careers. Exum has really struggled since coming back from this ankle injury, and at this point, it's really hard to rely upon Exum for anything at any point in any sort of format, whether that's the real NBA or in fantasy. He just has these recurring issues. It was the ankle that cost him 2 months, the knee issue. He's had shoulder issues that have cost him seasons. He just continues to get beat up, and his body is just not holding up at the moment. It's a real shame for Dante, not having any sort of a fantasy impact, of course, with his limited minutes and ability to stay on the court. Let's move on now to break down these 6 games from Thursday. The first game that we take a look at is the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. Really good win for the Pacers here, 108-106. Paul George was strong against his former team, 36-6-5 with 6 triples. Got to the line an absolute ton, 10 of 12 there. Shot the ball not too bad, but not great, while Terry Ferguson only played the 21 minutes. He's consistently getting into foul trouble, and that's limiting his playing time, and it's also boosting Dennis Schroeder's playing time. It's not resulting in good things for Schroeder because he was terrible, 7-5-5 in 32 minutes, and he is more of that 14-team league player, while Adams had 17-8 with very little else, and that's been a lot of the course for him most of the year. Jeremy Grant, only 3 points, but 2 steals and 2 blocks keeps him as a value 12-team, like a back-end guy, but a value 12-team guy nonetheless. And then on to the Pacers, Darren Collison, great. 17, 6 and 7 with 4 steals. And Domantas Sabonis, I'd said he'd really struggled to come back after his injury, and that was true. And he made it look silly in this one. 26, 7 and 4 in 28 minutes. The excellent 12 of 13 from the free throw line obviously really helps. And that sort of free throw rate with that sort of conversion isn't likely to continue. Wesley Matthews with the game winner. He had 16 points with 4 triples and 7 rebounds. One of his better games. He's a 14-team guy with some 12-team stream ability. But one thing we know is he's going to get a lot of minutes consistently on this team. Thad Young had 11 and 4 with 3 steals, while Miles Turner, the shooting continues to be annoying. 10 points, 6 rebounds, and a block. There's nothing you can do about it apart from hope that it turns around, which I think it will. Bogdan Bogdanović, uncharacteristically poor from the line, just 7 of 11 there, but 23 points and 5 assists makes it a relatively successful night for Bojan overall. The Cleveland Cavaliers and the Orlando Magic. The Magic win this one comfortably, 120-91. The Padawan Colin Sexton had 23 points, got to the line a lot, 44% from the field. He is a strong point streamer in 12-team leagues. I reckon at this point, if you were looking for points, and that's one of the only reasons you'd have someone like Andrew Wiggins on your roster, I would almost rather have Sexton at this point. He's got issues in other areas, but at least he added a block. At least he had those free throws in this game, which gives him some supplemental value. Kevin Love had 10 and 8 in a limited minute game, had some foul trouble, which kept him down, while Chetty Osman struggled a little bit. He's a 14 key guy, but a 12 stream, you must consider guy that you have at the back end of your roster. Brandon Knight's minutes were up again with Matty Dellavedova out. Now, whether they go back to 19 or 20 when Daly returns remains to be seen. But for now, mid-sized leagues, Knight is producing okay. While Ante Zizic was all right, 11 and 8 in 30 minutes. But as soon as Thompson or Nance or both return, his value is going to be pretty limited, I think. Marquise Chris returned from suspension and did nothing. For the Magic, pre-game, Steve Clifford said that he was looking to increase DJ Augustin's minutes down the stretch here. He'd been playing 28 minutes a night this season, so I think we're going to see some value, and he was excellent in only 26 minutes. He had 20 points, 7 assists, and 2 steals. He is a pretty strong consideration guy for 12-team formats, and probably someone you want to add. Aaron Gordon had 21 and 6, while Nikola Vucevic had 19 and 11 in his 26 minutes, just the consistency. And I did talk yesterday about how Terrence Ross, once he lays a turd burger, the next game is normally pretty good, and it was. 14, 4 and 4, 2 steals, a block, and 3 triples. I would rather have him in most 12-team scenarios than, say, someone like Wes Matthews. Johnny Isaac struggled, 10 points in his 29 minutes. I do still believe he is a 12-team league guy at the back end, but it's all about maximizing the categories that you need at this point in the season rather than just holding on to someone for upside potential. It just is not what happens at this stage in a head-to-head season. The Celtics get the win over the Kings, 126-120. Budrick Hield had 34, 4 and 7, really adding other parts to his game this season, which has been impressive, while the pencil, Harrison Barnes, 20 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, another big game from Barnes. He is, preferable to, say, an Andrew Wiggins and in a point streaming sort of a scenario, which is really where his value comes from, but strong again. While Fox had 19, 7 and 9, and Bill Cauley-Stein, really good from him, 10, 13 and 4 in 29 minutes. I can expect these minutes, I think, to come down a little bit when Bagley is getting his full run. Now, Bags returned. He only played 19 minutes, 14 and 6. I would imagine there's 2 factors to do with that. The fact that it was his first game back after the knee sprain, and it's the first game of a back-to-back scenario. So I think we'll see Bagley back at that 26, 27 minute mark pretty soon. That will impact Cauley-Stein and Bjelica. Bjelica started, he moved into that lineup, which is a curious decision to do on the game that Bagley returns. But 27 minutes for Bjelica, 9 and 6 with a steal and a block, not a 12-team ad, but he gets moves from, say, a 20-team league guy to a 16, maybe 14-team league player. For the Celtics, Terry Rozier was out. That meant that Jaylen Brown's value jumped up, 22 points in 32 minutes. And if Kyrie Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, or Terry Rozier. If one of those four guys are out, Jaylen Brown gets a bump and does become a streaming type option. Irving had 31, 10, and 12 with a 1-1. Didn't shoot well, but that's a strong line. While Marcus Morris, who's been bad for the last 3-4 weeks, was good. 21 and 13 with 3 threes on 47% shooting, but he's more of a luxury guy to hold on to, and there are going to be better waiver wire players around in most scenarios. Marcus Smart only had 7 points, but 6 rebounds and 4 assists are nice. And Tatum returned from his 1-game absence to post 15, 4, and 3 and shot 70%, but his numbers recently have been pretty poor. Also, Gordon Hayward, why is he still rostered in 79% of leagues? Surely the answer to that is that, hey, teams are just knocked out, and the teams that have held him this long didn't make the playoffs, but there is no reason to have him in any 12-team format that isn't one that stretches beyond this season. Next up, we look at the Lakers and the Raptors. Big win for the Raptors, 111-98. LeBron played 32 minutes.
LeBron James.
29, 4, and 6, strong from him. While big Alex Caruso, 27 minutes for Caruso, actually. 16, 5, and 5 on 71% shooting. A really strong performance from Caruso. He was significantly better, in my opinion, than Rajon Rondo in this game. I'm not saying to drop Rondo. I think you still got to hold him. But Caruso, especially if LeBron does sit in Friday's game, I think he's going to see his minutes spike. Rondo had 13, 5, and 8. Remains a must-roster guy. But Caruso is going to have stream value and maybe some 16-team league short-term value. The Reggie Bullock, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope cavalcade of shitfulness continued. 9 points for KCP. He did have 2 blocks, while Bullock had 7 points with 2 triples, and he has been an absolute disaster in his time in LA. While Flaming Mo Wagner, only the 8 minutes, and it's pretty comfortable that you can drop him, except that if LeBron does rest on Friday, I think you'll see Wagner perhaps move into the starting lineup with Kuzma pushing down to small forward, and that would give him 1-game value. As for the future MVP, yuck. 7, 8, and 3 on 27% shooting, 1 of 4 from the line. He has been quietly awful in his shooting this season, especially his 3-point shooting, really coming back to earth from what was an unsustainable level in his rookie season. Still remains a must-roster guy, but we're getting more of an idea, I think, of what the player Kuzma will be in his career. For the Raptors, the fun guy, Kawhi Leonard.
I'm a fun guy.
25, 8, and 4 with 5 triples and 2 steals, while good old Marc Gasol.
Oh, hi, Mark.
15 and 7, 2 triples, 4 assists, 2 steals. Only played 26 minutes. He copped a bit of a whack in the shoulder, and that did limit some of his playing time. He says he's fine. Otherwise, I think he would have gone over 30 minutes in this one, but that's strong. And while Serge is out, you've got 2 more games. Gasol remains a must-hold to me in 12-team format. Siakam played 39 minutes and shot 3 of 16. That's a disaster for a guy who's been really keeping your field goal percentage category strong all season. You love what else he did. 16, 5, and 6 with 2 steals and 2 blocks. And that's the difference between some of these guys that really do get by. Say like a Justin Jackson in Sacramento. Terrible comp, but a guy that will come out and put up 18 points. You go, shit, look at that. He did it on 65% shooting. Man, I've got to add him. But then when that falls off, maybe there's better options out there that I'm just blanking on. He offers nothing. Siakam, who's been really, really strong in holding your field goal percentage, is his best category and has done it all season. But then it dropped off and he added 6 assists and 2 steals and 2 blocks and really helped in those areas. And that's what makes a good fantasy player. Dan Green was bad, 3 points in his 19 minutes, while Paddy McCaw and the Jedi OG Anunoby,
Hello there.
they saw extra minutes with Lowry out, and Jeremy Lin started and had 9 and 7 in 21 minutes. When Van Vliet comes back, I don't really know what Lin's going to do in terms of his playing time. It's going to be pretty low, it would be my guess. The Utah Jazz blew out the Minnesota Timberwolves. No Derrick Rose, no Jeff Teague.
My name is Jeff.
So Tyus Jones started 12, 3, and 9. We don't know the status of Rose or Teague, but it's hard. It's not like they're Iron Men who play through everything. They get hurt all the time with different injuries. The Wolves are going nowhere. So Jones, in his own right, look, I think he's a better player than I think he's a better starting point guard for this team. Maybe not as much this year as what he was in the past. I think he's worth having in 12-team formats just to see what happens. Townsy had 26 and 12, while Wiggins returned, played 30 minutes and had 14 points on 17 shots. I don't think there's any need to have him as a must-roster 10-team league guy, or maybe even 12s. Keita Bates-Diop played minutes over Josh Okogie, only 16 minutes for Okogie, while Bates-Diop played 26. These are just deeper league type scenarios, but it's interesting that Bates-Diop played those extra minutes. Šarić sucked, and Taj Gibson added a weird 5 assists.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
We had Jared Bayless back in the mix because of those injuries to Teague and Rose. He's just a deeper league sort of a player. For the Jazz, Jingle and Joe's post-All-Star fire run continued, 12-5-8, while Derrick Favors back on track, 17-11 with 2 blocks and a steal. And like I said with Favors yesterday, he really fits a lot of teams well. He's not going to be for everybody, but he's not out of place on a 12-team league. The Donovan Mitchell.
He's Don. He's good.
I saw Tony Jones speculating today that he thinks that Mitchell may have been injured to begin this season because we're seeing a completely different version of him now. 9 free throw attempts, hit 7 of them, 47% from the field, 24, 3 and 6. This is the sort of bloke that we thought could be that top 20 player this season, while Gobert just did the bare minimum, but is still relatively strong. Ravishing Rick, I think we've got to look at him as just an assist streamer. 22 minutes on the back-to-back, coming back from injury. I don't think he's going to be pushing into big upper 30s in minutes, especially with how well Hull Neto is playing, and he's going to see a bit of a spike for deeper leagues, I think, if Dante Exum misses time, or even if Exum doesn't. Neto's outplaying him pretty comfortably at the moment. The last game of the day was the Mavericks. They lost to the Nuggets on a last-second buzzer-beating winner by Nikola Jokic. Let's talk Dallas. Jalen the Burner Brunson, 25-4, 3 triples, 53%. He won't continue to shoot this well, but he is a must-roster player across 12-team leagues and probably 10s, as is Dwight Powell, who had 16 and 10. Maxi Kleber, strong from him, 11 and 11 in 29 minutes. More of a 12-team adjacent sort of a player. But a 14-team league guy. They did make a switch to the starting lineup. Dorian Finney-Smith moved to the bench. Tim Hardaway started. He played 37 minutes and had 17 points with very little else. He's just a points streamer, and I'd feel pretty okay about dropping Timmy in 12-team formats. Dirk started and had 9 points, and not much else happening with that Mavericks squad. For the Nuggets, Paul Millsap was great, 33 and 8, one of his better games, 74% shooting, really coming on strong. While Nick Jokic was bad. Like, he was bad and then had 9 fourth-quarter points and ended with 11, 14 and 8 with a block and hit the game winner. Just shows you how good this guy can be. The Blue Arrow, 12, 5 and 7, while Will Barton and Gaz Harris struggled. Gaz Harris, I'm completely done with him in 12s. And Barton, I think you got to consider him a more stream back-end 12-team guy than a must-roster player. 31 minutes for Monty Morris, more minutes than Gaz Harris, more minutes than Will Barton. He had 7 points, 4 assists and 2 steals, a strong 12-team streamer and a 14-team league option, while Juancho Hernan-Gomez played in that 10th or 9th man role over Trey Lyles, who was available to play with Torrey Craig out with that shoulder injury. But, of course, he's not having too much of an impact. We're also seeing extended minutes for Mason Plumlee, another 24 minutes with 2 blocks and 11 boards. And Plumlee can be a big man stream type of option. That'll do it for the action from Thursday. Let's move in now and talk some DFS and start doing that by looking at the perfect lineups on DraftKings for Thursday. Westbrook, Norm Powell, Bud Hield, Kem Birch, Paul Millsap, Kyrie Irving, Marcus Morris, and Domantas Sabonis for a total of 402.75, and that costs 49,800. And then on FanDuel, DJ Augustin, Kyrie Irving, Buddy Hield, Luka Doncic, Paul George, Norm Powell, Marcus Morris, Paul Millsap, and Aaron Bainesy Baines for a total of 395.1, and that costs 59,900 dollary dues. Alright guys, let's look at Friday's action. 8 games across the NBA, focusing mainly on DraftKings pricing for today's slate of games. The first game we look at is the Sacramento Kings. They are traveling to take on the Philadelphia 76ers, the Nick Stauskas Revenge Game Tour. The Kings are on that back-to-back. They played today, lost to the Celtics. The Sixers 9-point favorites. The total 223 points. It's a really high total. Jimmy Butler, General Saunders, he should be back for this game. We also had Marvin Bagley return for the Kings on Thursday. Unsure if he'll play in the back-to-back, but minutes were fairly limited on Thursday, so I would guess that Bagley will play again on a relatively limited workload in this game. We've also got Prison Mike and Ben Simmons listed as probable for the Sixers with an illness that seems to be going around. At point guard, De'Aaron Fox is at 6,900.
Giggity!
He is comfortably exceeding that. He's playing shit ton of minutes now on a back-to-back against the Sixers team that does defend point guards very, very well. It's maybe a bit of a risky spot for Fox, but that $6,900 price tag on DraftKings is pretty much too good to ignore in my opinion. And then you got Simmons at 85, who it'll be a little bit harder for him to get value if Butler is back along with Embiid. We haven't really seen all these guys play together huge amounts over these past couple of weeks, and that's elevated Simmons' production, but he's still not a bad option in this one. At shooting guard, JJ Redick's at 5,000. There are better ways out there to spend that money. While General Soreness himself, 7,200. He does average 40 a game against the Kings. Yes, as a member of the Timberwolves, and he was playing 40 minutes in those games. But at 7,200, he's a reasonable shot to be able to hit value, and not the best play, but not a terrible one. Bogdan Bogdanović moved to the bench for the Kings on Thursday, so he's someone that I'm not all that interested in, especially with the low minutes load that he was given. The pencil, Harrison Barnes. He's at 5,500, and he's been putting up numbers to exceed that value relatively consistently. I'd be okay with getting him into a lineup, especially for cash. While Toby Harris at 72 hasn't quite been at that level, and there are better ways out there, I think, of utilizing 7,200. Nemanja Bjelica is an interesting one. 4,600, started again with Bagley back. 27 minutes in that game on Thursday, only 20 points. More of a tournament guy, not one I'm super interested in for cash, but something there. Harry Giles at 37, just not enough playing time. Embiid at 9.9, I love that, is an absolute cash lock to me. While Cauley Stein with Bagley back was still really good on Thursday against a tough team in the Celtics. 36 points at 29 minutes, and at 5,200, Cauley Stein is in play if that level of production is going to be anything to go by. On FanDuel, the pencil, Barnesy, 5,500. I like that. I like Embiid. I like Cauley Stein at 56. I think Bud Hield at 68 is a much better proposition on FanDuel than what he is on DraftKings as well. Next game up, we look at the Charlotte Hornets and the Washington Wizards. The Wizards are 3.5 point favorites here. The total 232. We know centers going off against the Hornets has been a common theme over the past 2 months, perhaps. And there are a couple of interesting centers on the Wizards. Punch Bob Shiplock and Tom Bryant. It was Bryant's game last time. Portis has had a very good record against Charlotte, so some opportunities here. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist and Marvin Williams are both probable for the Hornets, while Trevor Ariza and Slammon Sammy Dekker are questionable for the Wizards. We've got Nick Batum also probable for the Hornets, and Cody Zeller is doubtful with that knee injury, so opening up some minutes there in that front court for Bill Hernangomez and Frank the Tank Kaminsky. At point guard, Tomas Satoransky struggled last time out, only 20 points, but the minutes were there. He's averaging 39 minutes a game over his last 5, and it's sub 6,000, 5,800 to be exact on DraftKings. I do like his bounce back potential here, whereas Kemba at 8,200, really like that too. Now, Satoransky and the Wizards have been really good at limiting opposition point guards, so that's, I guess, the only strike we have against Kemba, but his minutes are through the roof. He's carrying this team to try and get them into the playoffs, and I think Kemba is absolutely worth a go here. At shooting guard, Jeremy Lamb, I like him at 5,800. Big minutes, solid production, really, really strong for cash, while Beal at 9,500. Anytime Bradley Beal comes in at 10,000, I think you have to look at him as a pretty much cash lock. Batum also, fantastic cash value. There's a lot of value in this game. Batum's at 5,600. His lowest score in his last 5 has been 25, and I would take that as a cash option at that sort of a salary. So I really like Batum here. And then if Ariza is out, someone like Troy Brown at absolute minimum salary, I don't know if they would start him, but I don't know who else they would put into that position. Are they going to move Dekker down to the 3? He's also questionable. So Troy Brown could be a really, really interesting guy who is averaging almost a point per minute over his last 5 games. And at 3,000, if he got 22 minutes, 23 minutes, then the value would be pretty clearly there for him. At small forward, Marvin Williams at 4,600. I love the matchup for Marv. Has really played well against Washington in the past. And we say that it's good for big men to go up against the Hornets. It's pretty good for big men to go up against the Wizards as well. And this is a situation where Kaminsky's not going to be playing much at power forward, so opening up more minutes for Marvin Williams there. So I like him at 4,600. Ariza at 57. His value, as I detailed yesterday or the day before, really has dropped off because of the lack of steals. And now he's injured, so I'm not that interested. While Jabari Parker is giving us 30 a night comfortably. It's on the back of like 60% shooting. So when that falls off, I worry that the production will drop right back down. And the salary is up to 58 now, so this might be the time to fade off on him. At centre, Bill Hernangomez was piss poor last time, 19 points, but at 3,200 on a piss poor night in a start in 24 minutes, that's all right. And then if he has a decent game and has a 12 and 10 double-double and blocks 2 shots, then he easily exceeds that number. So while you go, oh, he was bad last time, at 3,200, 19 points isn't bad. It's actually not a terrible result at all. And if he gives you 25 points, you're already staring 8x value right in the face. Punch Bob's at 61. He was also bad last game, but I love this matchup for Portis. In on him. Jeff Green, not so much, and then you got Frank the Tank at 4,500, and there are much better options on the DraftKings slate, I think, than Kaminsky. Tom Bryant had been disgracefully poor up until last game where he dropped 41. I think you can only look at him as a tournament guy, and realistically only because they are playing the Charlotte Hornets. On FanDuel, the similar sort of stuff. Portis, Hernan Gomez, we like those guys. Frank the Tank, significantly better on FanDuel. I like Jeremy Lamb. Beal at 10.8, even though it is above that 10,000 that I mentioned I like. And Kemba at 9.2. So those two studs both in really good spots here. The next game we're looking at the moment is the Los Angeles Lakers on a back-to-back taking on the Detroit Pistons. Now, at this point, we don't know whether LeBron James is going to play in this game.
LeBron James.
Or if he's going to rest.
I'm not tired.
This is the first back-to-back since those minutes restrictions for James were mentioned. Now, again, he could be out, he could be in. I'll go through, assuming that LeBron plays, what I think of the Lakers, and I'll also just a quick touch on if he is out, because that's a big swing type of scenario. For the Pistons, actually, Lance Stephenson also questionable, missed the last few with a toe injury. For the Pistons, the Shark, Bruce Brown is probable.
Baby shark.
And you got Reggie Jackson, who is questionable, injuring his ankle at the end of the last game. Now, Jackson's all the way down at 4,300. If he is fine to play, this is a great matchup, and it's a great price. I would love him as a tournament guy. And if he is out, of course, Ish Smith at 3,900, we would absolutely smash lock that into cash and into tournaments. Rajon Rondo at 6,400, he is not good at all, but the minutes are there for him. I see a lot of people seeming to think that he might sit out this game. That is a possibility. I don't believe it's the case, but at 6,400, especially if LeBron is out, I think that you look at Rondo as a pretty strong option here. Langston Galloway at 3,200. Well, the minutes still inexplicably remain there for him. Well, Alex Caruso is the other guy you got to look at. 3,200, excelled on Thursday. Best point guard currently active on this roster. And an opportunity, especially if LeBron is out, I would really look to him as a strong play. The Duck, Luke Kennard's at 4,400, has been okay. The minutes have been solid. The production's been down, but I think he's worth a look in a positive matchup. Josh the Hitman Hart, can't trust his knee. Reggie Bullock and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope against their former teams. Realistically, you're just looking at them as tournament guys, and I wouldn't want to put both of them into the same lineup. The Duke, Wayne Ellington, Lance Stephenson, not really interested. At small forward, the future MVP, Kyle Kuzma. If LeBron is out, Kuzma's going to take every single shot available. Now, he was a disaster against the Raptors, couldn't hit anything, but I think Kuzma at 6,200 without LeBron would work pretty well. As for James himself, he's all the way down at 10,300. I think you have to look at him really as a tournament guy, even if he does play, because the minutes might be on the low side. I really like the Pistons big men here. They've been a little bit down, but Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond, you have to love the matchup for big men going up against the Lakers. So both Griffo and Drummo are in play here, while JaVale McGee was disappointing against the Raptors. He's at 4,400, and at this point, he's just a tournament upside-ish sort of a guy. Now, before I go over and flick over to how it looks on FanDuel, and you can do this over on Basketball Monster, set your scenario to look at what LeBron James being out would do. It really, I think, boosts the value of Flaming Mo Wagner. You get Kuzma down at the 3, Wagner starting at the 4. He would become a strong option there. I love what it would do for Alex Caruso as well. His minutes would jump right up. I think it boosts McGee's playing time a little bit as well. And of course, it really does help Rondo, and the value of Bullock and KCP in those tournament builds does increase as well. Over on FanDuel, Ish Smith, Reggie Jackson. Yeah, we've got the scenarios with both of those guys. If Jackson's out, you look at Smith. If Jackson plays, I do like him. Drummo at 10,000. Griffin, I like quite a bit as well. And then you got Rondo at 68, who comes in okay. And then Caruso, of course, at 3,600, especially if we get that LeBron James absence. Next up, the Milwaukee Bucks and the Miami Heat. The Bucks are 4.5-point favorites here. The total is 220. The Spoelstra rotations always have a risk of killing overall value with fantasy for DFS or for seasonal league type of stuff. And we've seen that recently with Kelly Olynyk's playing time really drop off disappointingly. Injury-wise in this one, George Hill has been upgraded to probable. Sterling Brown is out for the Bucks, though, while Dwayne Wade is listed as questionable for the Miami Heat. At point guard, you got Wado at 4,800. The numbers have been a little bit down for Wade, but if he does play, that's a really, really strong price for Wade. A good tournament play. Brogdon's at 53, hasn't really been living up to that level of salary over recent times. So while that's a really nice price for Brogo, I'm not thinking that he's the greatest play out here. While Bledsoe at 6,100, love this salary for Bledsoe, love the cash value, and he has also legitimately got 50-point upside. Justice Winslow at 58, been pretty good for cash lately, especially if Wade is out. I'd be all about Justice there. While Goran Dragic, the iron shoulder, at 4,500, you're not really going to do it for me. Joshy Richardson was really strong last game, 5,800, but he's a little bit hard to trust. The matchup is okay for Richo. I think he's more of a tournament player than anything else. While Chrissy Middleton at 68, I'd rather take Bledsoe at 61. Yes, different positions, but that salary save does work. Dion Waiters would be a GPP option if Wade sits as well. For the small forward guys, Giannis Antetokounmpo, 10,900. I don't see how you can't like that price for Giannis. Really, really good salary. Love him in this one here. Derrick Jones Jr. could get a bit of a boost if Wado is out as well. He'd be an interesting tournament guy for his defensive stats upside. And then for the big men, Bam Adebayo.
Bam, 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 bam.
Another one of those guys where the Spoelstra rotations can really hurt him. Only 17 minutes last game, but in a very, very positive matchup at 5,200. You lean towards him being a cash guy. You love him for tournaments, but you do lean towards him for cash. While Whiteside at 5,700 is really just a GPP sort of a guy, again, despite the positive matchup. Nikola Mirotic at 4,500. Yeah, I'd say, look, he hasn't really had a big explosive game as a member of the Bucks, but he's been in that low 20s mark, which at 4,500 is not too far off. He's not the greatest option here, while the Linux minutes have plummeted. He's at 5,400. I think we stay away from him for now. When Brook Lopez, limited ceiling, but really rock solid floor, 5,800. I do like Lopez a significant amount here in this matchup. Over on FanDuel, Bam Adebayo at 5,800, there's some value in him. Richardson at 62 comes across okay, but probably still more for tournaments. I like Winslow and I like Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I think Olynyk is a significantly better FanDuel option than he is over on DraftKings. The next game we take a look at, the Phoenix Suns taking on the Houston Rockets. Of course, the much anticipated Ryan Anderson and Brandon Knight rematch after their trade/revenges. Of course, neither of those guys are on these teams anymore if you didn't catch the jest. Tyler Johnson is questionable for the Phoenix Suns. If he is out, will we actually see DeAnthony Melton back in the rotation, or will we be subjected to 33 minutes of Jamal Crawford? That's, of course, the likely course that Kokoshkov will go down. There's Ali Akobo who could come in as well. Troy Daniels can come and thieve minutes also. So there's no set, massive, like I'm going to be totally on Melton here. He would be an interesting GPP guy and the best option out of that quartet that I mentioned as well. At point guard, actually, that's the wrong game. This is the right one. Okay, at point guard, Chris Paul, 6,900.
Giggity.
Yep, giggity indeed. Chris Paul's been giving us some solid-ish numbers around that, minimum 30, 32 mark, 37, 40 upside. Like the value there. While Jimmy Harden's at 11,000 on DraftKings, has torched the Suns in the past. I like him at that salary. It's always hard to go past Harden. Dev Booker at 81. You can almost write him in, not quite in pen, but pretty close to being in pen for 40 points. So I really think that he's a strong option, and I wouldn't be using Tyler Johnson with the injury hanging over his head. The Austin Rivers revenge game. Let's see if he can get more than the 6 points per game he is averaging over his last 3. At shooting guard, Eric Gordon's at 49. I only like him for tournaments, and even then, not that strongly. While Kelly Oubre at 59, that's rock solid for cash. Love what Oubre's been doing. He's transformed into a completely different player outside of Washington. For the small forwards, PJ Tucker's a no. Josh Jackson's an even bigger no. And then we go on to the big men, and I love both of these guys. Clint Capella and DeAndre Ayton. Now, Ayton was disgracefully bad last game, just 19 points, but he is all the way down at 6,100, so I like him to be able to at least put 30 on the board here. While Capella at 7,300, you don't get too many better positive matchups for centers unless you're Charlotte or the Clippers. Then going against the Suns, so this is a good one. For Clint, Ken Farid, I don't really see it. Holmesy and Dragan Bender, probably not. Also, on the old FanDuel, Capella at 83 I like. Eric Gordon at 55 is okay. I think Harden's probably a little bit too high at 12.5, but McCall Bridges comes in as a probably low ceiling, high floor type of a guy who can get those defensive numbers, and at 4,400, that's strong. Ayton is probably too high at 7,700, as is Chris Paul at 84, but I do like Oubre at 6,800 over on FanDuel. Next up, the Portland Trailblazers and the New Orleans Pelicans. The Blazers are 8-point favourites. The total is 235.5. Yusuf Nurkic in a big opportunity here. The Pelicans have been really, really lax in defending opposition centres. This is a back-to-back for the Pelicans. We don't know if Anthony Davis will be resting or not.
I'm not tired.
Or if he's going to sit out Saturday's game. If he is out, of course, Jahlil Okafor and Cheick Diallo get boost. We already know that Drew Holiday and Etuan Moore are out of this game. At point guard, CJ McCollum's at 6,800, riding a real hot streak at the moment. Has struggled in the past against the Pelicans, not including the playoffs. He's averaging 26 over the last 3 times against them, but with no Drew Holiday there, I don't think Frank Jackson's really providing the same level of defense. So I think CJ can continue. Lord Alfred Payton, the triple-double master in March at 6,600, absolutely love that. And Damo Lillard at 9,000. Unlike his backcourt mate McCollum, he does well against this Pelicans team in the regular season, averaging 54 the last 3 times out, and at 9,000, that's pretty tough to ignore. Frankie Jackson at 4,900. If the shots don't go in, he gives you nothing. And we saw that last game, 18 points in 34 minutes. At 4,900, he's got clear 30, 35 point upside, which makes him a GPP guy, but could also have a 16 or 17 pointer, which is a disaster for cash. For the shooting guards, it's really only Rocket Rodney Hood, and I don't know why I bothered mentioning him. The small forwards, the Chief Al-Farouq Aminu.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
I think he's got good GPP upside. I didn't mention that Mo Harkless is questionable as well, and I think that does help Aminu a little bit. Also, Kenrick Williams and Darius Miller, they're not really doing too much, while Flaming Mo at 4,300 is going to be a pass. Now, if Harkless is out, you've got Jake the Snake Layman at 3,300. I would use that. I think there's some cash value and some tournament upside, and even Evan Turner gets a marginal boost, but I'm not super into him. For the big man, Nurkic at 74, all about Nurk here. This should be a 40-point minimum for Nurkic in a very positive matchup. While Julius Randle, I think you're getting almost a floor of 35 points, which at 8,300 is strong for cash. Tone Davis at 71, well, if he plays, he's getting that every night really comfortably. So you should have, I guess, some level of value in thinking he's going to come in and get you those 35, 37 points. But if he has even a marginal off night in 21 minutes, it's hard to recover, and the upside is limited by those minutes. Enes Kanter's at 4,500. Strong game against the Clippers last time out. I'm not really going to bank on that. While Okafor and Diallo are guys we really only look at if Davis is out, and I would prefer Check over Jahlil. On FanDuel, Julius Randle and Yusuf Nurkic, I like both of those guys here. I think Kenrick Williams is in a little bit of a better situation, but realistically, he's just a tournament sort of a player. And then you got 7,800 for Davis, and my same concerns reside on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Lillard at 9,900, that might be a bit high, and the 76 for Payton. I'd probably take the 76 for Payton over the 99 for Lillard because I'm saving that money, and realistically, Payton can get you a 50. We've seen that last game. He had 52 points with another March triple-double with a bunch of guys injured, and that's going to be the same situation for him in this game. The Knicks and the Spurs in San Antonio. The Spurs are 13-point favourites, and the total is a very, very low 216.5. The Spurs are playing pretty well at the moment. The Knicks are not. Dennis Smith Jr. is questionable for the Knicks, so that's going to unlock maybe some Emmanuel Mudiay and perhaps Kadeem Allen. Remember that bloke from a few weeks ago? On the Spurs, Rudy Gay has been upgraded to probable with his influenza, so he is likely back. Now, whether he starts or it's Jakob Poeltl, we don't know at this point. At point guard, I think there's a lot of GPP value here for guys like Pat Mills and Bryn Forbes at their $3,300 and $3,500 price points respectively. Because they're playing the Knicks, they can go out there and bomb threes, but you wouldn't want to use these players in cash. While Mudiay at 4,200, he had 37 points last game in 32 minutes. With Smith already questionable, I think Mudiay is actually an option here. Now, that pains me to say. Derek White's at 6,300. Love Whiteo. Really think that's a good cash play in a very good matchup. Dennis Smith, I don't think you can trust it, nor Alonzo Trier. Marco Bellinelli's at 3,300. Like Millsy and Forbesy, he is a guy that you look at as that GPP potential player. While Damo Dotson, unbelievable at the moment. $5,000 for Dotto. Can I say that he is reliable? Yeah, I'm not quite there yet. I'm not far off, and at 5,000, I think that gives you a decent amount of leeway to use him, while DeMar DeRozan is putting up big numbers consistently. 8,400, I like it for cash and for tournaments. For the small forwards, the Fort, Kevin Knox is playing a little bit better. I still don't really think there's good value, but he did drop a 38 on the Spurs earlier this season. I'm not really expecting that to happen again. Rudy Gay's at 6,000, coming back from an illness. I think I'd end up fading him. And then at centre, Mitchell Robinson's at 5,700, only for tournaments with the Fizdale factor and the fouls. And DeAndre Jordan, I think you can only look at him in tournaments because there's a chance that if Robinson isn't in foul trouble, Jordan might play 20 minutes, or he could play 35, or he could play 10. It is really hard to rely upon any of those guys. Pirtle at 4,500, I think is more of a GPP guy at that sort of a salary than anything else. On FanDuel, Pirtle comes in a little bit better because of the pricing structure, 4,900, more value in him there. Ballinelli is that upside GPP guy. LaMarcus Aldridge I preferred on FanDuel to DraftKings. And Mudiay at 48 also comes in okay. I think 7,200 for Derek White does work on FanDuel. Dotson's at 58. That's getting a bit risky to me. And then DeRozan at 95. That is, it's getting a little bit too high. And by a little bit, I mean that's a lot too high. The last game of the day, we're looking at the Chicago Bulls and the LA Clippers. The Clippers are 8.5-point favorites, and the total is 229. The Rooster, Danilo Gallinari. Doc Rivers and Gallinari said he would be back in this one, but the Clippers officially listed him as questionable. He said he wasn't resting. He had ankle soreness, so that's something to mention. While the Bulls have upgraded Zach LaVine, who we don't know how long he's going to be out. He misses 1 game or 2 games. He's back to probable. Otto Porter also probable with his knee issue. At point guard, you got to love Lou Williams here. 7,100 should really tear this Bulls team apart. While Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the upside's pretty limited, but at 4,000, I like what he's doing. He's playing more in control, and the minutes are rising, and it's a good matchup for Shai. So he could be worked into a cash lineup. Beverly's at 51. That's a decent enough price, and the matchup's good enough, but I'm not super involved in him. I find it hard to trust LaVine, and for Chris Dunn at 5,400, I would use Dunn if LaVine is out. That'd be the only scenario. And Archer Giacono, the same. 3,700. Zachy sits. Then I think Arch at that price point, 3,700 would work really well. Was close to 9x value last game. Landry Shamet's at 4,000. Great for streaming threes in seasonal fantasy. Yeah, not that good in DFS. I think limited upside because of his inability to do anything else. While if Porter sits, you've got someone like Wayne Selden at 34 who would become a really interesting option. Even if they started Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot, Selden will get the bulk of those minutes, I believe. The Roosters at 6,500, I feel really good about his floor, while Porter at 67 the same. Both of those guys can be used. They're both listed as probable at the moment. I would have the Rooster as marginally ahead of where Otto Porter sits. For the big men, Ivica Zubats, 4,500. Big men against the Bulls, we love that matchup. Zubats has been providing pretty good numbers. I don't think there's much for him for tournaments. Cash is okay, but not the best. While Robin Lopez at 57, yeah, just maybe just a smidge too high. And Lauri Markkanen has been just shitting the bed consistently. He's at 8,000. He's got 50-point upside, but that salary is too high for me to really get too invested. The table at 6,000, Montrezl Harrell, I love that. He should smash this Bulls team and smash them into absolute oblivion. The next game, on FanDuel, Robin Lopez, yeah, works out a little bit better for him on FanDuel. Lou Williams, I love. Markkanen is a much more attractive option on FanDuel as well. Porter comes in strong, and Gilgeous-Alexander probably worse of an option on FanDuel than he is over on DraftKings. All right, let's have a look at some studs and values at this point. On DraftKings, we've got my stud is Andre Drummond and my value is Starvin Marvin Williams. On FanDuel, my stud is Clint Capella and my value is Punch Bobby Portis. On Yahoo, my stud is LaMarcus Aldridge and my value is Jakob Poeltl. And on DraftStars, my stud is Andre Drummond and my value is Jeremy Lamb. That wraps it up for another week of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Check out the rest of the shows across the Locked On Podcast Network and follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. Subscribe, leave a 5-star rating or review, or on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a thumbs up, and leave a comment below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Wilson Chandler.